Harold Sakata, the 284-pound wrestling sensation from Hawaii, is heading for a new career. If he passes his screen test, he'll play a murderous muscle man in the new James Bond movie thriller, Goldfinger. And what a screen test it is. Those were 4 blocks of walnut that can support an elephant. Now for footsies. This can really fracture you. Harold's toes hang together, the part is his. Here's Sakata's first scene in Goldfinger. He's mixing it up with Sean Connery, who stars as Special Agent James Bond in the United Artists adventure film. The setting is the U.S. Treasury's gold vault at Fort Knox. It looks like the first round goes to Sakata. With it goes the admiration of youngsters visiting the set.
Okay, welcome to Trimming the Movie Fat, the podcast where we trim films from franchises that don't belong. I'm Stephen Nicholson, and thank you for joining us as we conclude the first part of our look at Sean Connery's original 6 James Bond movies. Today we critique his third movie, the Bond Buster, 1964's Goldfinger. Joining me on board Goldfinger's private jet, Kentucky, are my brother Paul, my friend Paul, and my son Ben.
Stop! Look! He's gunning for trouble. 007. It spells Bond.
Shocking.
He's the idol of every woman.
Who are you?
Bond. James Bond.
The envy of every man. The nemesis of the treacherous Mr. Goldfinger. Goldfinger, a triumph in thrill-making cinema entertainment.
The man with the mind.
A 3-time winner for Fleming's Secret Agent 007.
You.
My name is Pussy Galore.
Isn't it customary to grant the condemned man his last request?
You've asked for this.
Come and purr over Honor Blackman as Pussy Galore. The female who is all feline. Also starring Gert Frobe as Goldfinger. International cheat. International menace.
Gentlemen! Goldfinger. Why weren't we told the New York and the West Coast were in on this?
Goldfinger, I made a delivery. Where is my money?
And you owe me $1 million.
Goldfinger, the man with a finger in every pie. His goal, Fort Knox, the world's biggest bank. His enemy, 007, the world's wiliest, toughest gentleman agent with a license to kill. 007, it spells Bond. James Bond. Mixing business with girls and thrills. Girls and fun. Girls and danger. The hotter the danger, the cooler he takes it.
I think you've made your point, Goldfinger. Thank you for the demonstration.
Choose your next witticism carefully, Mr. Bond. It may be your last.
Do you expect me to talk?
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
I don't think many people know. I mean, I give lots of talks, and when I talk about revoicing, people look, you can see the way people react. Goldfinger was revoiced? You know, they have no idea. Revoicing people in films is very, very rare. In my career, I don't ever remember anyone ever being revoiced because you cast according to the actor that you require. But once on the Bond films, they were making every effort to get somebody that was appropriate for the part, that they looked foreign, sounded foreign. Then you got into difficult water. When Cubby and Harry saw the rushes, they were absolutely appalled. And I think they went bananas, I think was his actual expression. Well, it wasn't so much that he couldn't speak English. What he'd done was he'd learnt his lines previously the night before, parrot fashion, and that's the only way you can say it. So obviously Guy would have detected, I mean, before Cubby and Harry would have complained, I would have thought, would have realised when he was shooting that even though he could do the scene, he obviously wasn't going to be able to keep the voice. And he would have known that in the world of films, you can revoice if you have to. Huge decision, mind you, but it was too late by then.
So Goldfinger was released in 1964 and directed by Guy Hamilton. In this one, Special Agent 007, Sean Connery, comes face to face with one of the most notorious villains of all time, and now must outwit and outgun the powerful tycoon to prevent him from cashing in on a devious scheme to raid Fort Knox and obliterate the world's economy. This movie grossed $125 million on a budget of $3 million. So it made 42 times its budget. Ratings-wise, has, well, a series best up to this point, 99% fresh Rotten Tomatoes score, and 89% Rotten Tomatoes audience score. Over on IMDb, from the audience, it's 7.7 out of 10, and from the critics, 87 out of 100. And here's a fact for you. Sir Sean Connery never travelled to the United States to film this movie. Every scene which he appears to be in the US was filmed at Pinewood Studios outside London. And if you're looking for a movie mistake, how did Bond attach a magnetic device to a gold car when the metal gold is non-ferrous and not magnetic? And in summary, Goldfinger is where James Bond, as we know him, comes into focus. It features one of Bond's most famous lines,
"A martini, shaken, not stirred."
and a wide range of gadgets that would become the series' trademark. So, gents, this is the biggest Bond of all up to this point. Do you remember when you first seen it?
Yep, again on the telly, again, probably a Sunday night. Of just superb film. Absolutely superb film. Great opening sequence, great title theme, cool all the way through. Some great one-liners, a great story, great action, just a total class film.
Yeah, I remember when this came out, I went to see it in the cinema in 1964, in my dreams. No, we would have saw it on ITV as well back in the day, and for me, this is where Bond begins, really, in some ways. This is like the Bond that you kind of knew growing up. This is where that begins, really. It's just fast-paced, it's brilliant, it's got gadgets, it takes Bond in a totally different direction and becomes a phenomenon. A bit like, I always say it is what the Beatles were to music, Bond was to movies, that phenomenon, world phenomenon. This is where it really kicks off.
Yeah, I mean, this is where it establishes the formula, doesn't it? The ordering of the drink, the James Bond line, Bond getting his gadgets from Q, he's getting his orders from F in the office, your interplay with Moneypenny, the meeting with the villain in a social situation before they get down to fighting each other later on in the movie. Yeah, the classic theme tune, the pre-title sequence, so it all really gets established this year, doesn't it? And it's going to be different from the off as well compared to the first two. When in the pre-title sequence, it looks like a duck is swimming into the kind of dock area, and it turns out it's Bond with the duck stuck to his head. Yeah, the wetsuit there, which is pretty silly. And that's maybe the sign that things are changing a little bit here, and that we're getting a little bit more outlandish with things, that we're going bigger and maybe playing things for laughs a little bit more compared to the first two. Ben, what did you think of Goldfinger?
It's definitely improvement over the other two movies, and it definitely adds like some of the iconic things that would like be continued in the franchise. And yeah, I think that it's really good, but I think that the third act was probably the weakest out of it all.
Right. Okay. And we'll come to that later on. So Let's stick with the pre-title sequence. You've got Bond, and that's another thing which is established, of course, a pre-title sequence that has no bearing at all on the rest of the movie. It's just a mini movie. And you've got that iconic moment when Bond has placed the explosive and he's jumped back down and he's obviously taken off his wetsuit and he's got the white tuxedo underneath, which is just coolness personified. He then goes into the bar and obviously eventually meets the dancer in a room. And you get the really cool fight sequence there with the immortal line when the guy has been electrocuted.
Shocking. Positively shocking.
And I love how when he leaves the room and the door shuts, that coincides with the first notes of the Goldfinger theme. Brilliant stuff. Yeah. What do you think about the main theme?
Well, it's classic, isn't it? It's, again, a simple tune. A simple intro, 2 notes, and yeah, it just hits you so hard. It's just memorable, especially after the opening sequence. As you say, when the door closes, it kicks in. It's one of those movie themes that it's memorable. It's up there with Star Wars, the Morricone themes in like The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. They're just simple themes, but memorable. The title sequence as well, you see scenes from the film superimposed on gold. That's pretty clever as well. And it's sort of the first time you see the title sequence like that, where it becomes an art form in itself. And yeah, it's just a classic opening to a great film.
It just fits together like, this is the film where it really kicks off. And this is the film where theme tunes become something in their own entirety as well. They become as much of what people look forward to when the new film comes out as the theme tune. I think this film kicks that off, and it became quite a prestigious thing if you're selected to do a Bond theme from now on. And this just starts that. But yeah, great, really good soundtrack. I remember it did so well in America as well. The soundtrack at the time, it's brilliant. And I love the opening scene when they go to Miami. And then the person jumps in the pool and stuff like that, and the Fontainebleau, and just, it's funny when you watch some of it now, because you can totally see, oh yeah, that's when he's in Miami, that's when he's in Pinewood. The guy that plays Felix Leiter, you can totally see what bits are in the studio and what bits.
Laurie Goldfinger. Sounds like a French nail varnish.
He's British, but he doesn't sound like it.
He was the only one that actually got to go to Miami. Everyone else was at Pinewood, yep. And you, of course, have been to that hotel, Paul, in Miami.
I have, yes. Not been inside it, we've been outside it. But, yeah, it just looks brilliant. And I think Sean Connery was too busy. He couldn't go over to Miami. I think he was filming, maybe it was that Marnie, the Alfred Hitchcock movie, filming that, so he couldn't get over. So that's why it's all done in Pinewood. I think they do a good job of it. I mean, I have to say, Sean Connery's that wee swim outfit's really bad. The blue thing that he wears is terrible. It's like a baby girl or something.
We're talking about things you wouldn't get away with now. That's one of the things when he's dressed in that and he's talking to is it Dink? He's like, right, you need to go now. Smacks of him, man talk.
Dink, meet Felix Leiter.
Hello.
Felix, say hello to Dink.
Hi, Dink.
Dink, say goodbye to Felix. Man talk.
Yeah, I don't know if you'd get away with that now. But yeah, it's a great opening, I think, into Miami, the piece of music that's played, and yeah, that kind of aerial shot that comes into the hotel and watches the guy do the jumping off the diving board is iconic. And we're then soon introduced to Jill.
Jill Moss.
Who's working for Goldfinger. She's up in the balcony helping him cheat at playing cards there. And she becomes basically she's the one that gets killed by being covered in gold.
Who are you?
Bond. James Bond.
What do we think about that as a method of killing?
Innovative, I suppose.
Get over here right away.
What's up?
The girl's dead.
Dink?
Masterson. Jill Masterson. And she's covered in paint. Gold paint.
I never knew you could do that, actually. Paint something gold and his skin suffocates. I don't know if it's true or not, but
no, it is.
Yeah.
Yep, they had to leave
again,
a wee
it's
bit.
one of the many iconic scenes in the film, many memorable scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, John Barry's great score soundtracks that as well.
Yeah, it's used by Sneaker Pimps.
Yeah.
Six Underground.
Yeah.
Very interesting way of getting killed, but I think it's a very good scene because the movie up to then was just quite light-hearted, but then it got really dark when that happened because you weren't really expecting it to happen.
And obviously, as part of her getting killed, Bond gets knocked out beforehand by Oddjob, who is one of the most memorable henchmen in the Bond franchise. What is it that makes him so iconic, and how does he add to the film's tension?
Probably the hat.
Remarkable. But what does the club secretary have to say?
Oh, nothing, Mr. Bond. I own the club.
Yeah, I would say the hat. And the
is great, very memorable. And again, I suppose that's another thing that's kicked off with this movie, which becomes part of the formula, that the main villain has the kind of henchman, right-hand man, so to speak, or woman, and Oddjob is one of the best ones. What makes him one of the best ones?
Well, the hat, of course, and the fact he's hard as nails as well. And he just sort of stands there and smiles whilst Bond's in with bars of gold and whatever.
And he can crush a golf ball with his hand.
Exactly, yeah. And yeah, he's just... Yeah, you hear the music as well every time he points to the hat. It's like that ting, ting, you know, the...
I know, it is.
Yeah, he's just he's a really, really good character. Again, he's believable as well as a henchman, not some 7-foot monstrosity or, some wild karate expert. He's just cool, he's just there. He's not flashy or anything like that, but he's just there, and Goldfinger knows he'll be there all the time.
And he gets an absolutely fantastic death scene as well.
I wonder how that actually worked, because the metal bars go into the floor, they're separate. So unless concrete conducts electricity, which I don't think it does.
There'll be a way. There'll be a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's just, and even the bit in Fort Knox at the end when he's fighting, and then Sean Connery or Bond gets the hat, and then suddenly, that's the only time you sort of see him vulnerable in the whole film, because he always looks so menacing. But yeah, he's brilliant, one of the best.
Well, apart from when he was getting a laser about to cut him in half.
No, I was talking about Oddjob looking vulnerable. Do you know when he's got Oddjob's hat?
Right, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, and Oddjob's like...
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one of the most iconic scenes.
And talking of that sequence, so how good is Ken Adams' work again? I mean, I'm thinking about the Fort Knox, especially inside the vault. How good is that as a set?
Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
Oh, yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah, absolutely brilliant.
And we've not talked about Goldfinger. So, I mean, how does Auric Goldfinger compare to other Bond villains, and do you think his motives and personality make him a standout antagonist?
Yeah, I do. I think he doesn't come across as a megalomaniac until he starts talking about his plans. But even then, he just sounds like a supervillain.
Man has climbed Mount Everest, gone to the bottom of the ocean. He has fired rockets to the moon, split the atom, achieved miracles in every field of human endeavor, except crime.
Just somebody who wants world domination. He just wants gold. He covets it. I think he's credible as a villain. He's not too extreme or too outlandish. And think about his motivation for what he's doing. It's just greed. That's all it is. It's a basic human emotion.
I love gold!
Oh, sorry, that was Goldfinger.
Yeah, he's a good villain, and he has a good sort of rivalry with James Bond.
Yeah, I like the golf game, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're both cheating, trying to win the game, which is great. They obviously got Gert Frobe to play Goldfinger, but his English wasn't the best. So whenever he was kind of doing his lines, it was just like gobbledygook, and nobody knew what he was saying. So they had to, just kind of when he stopped speaking, they'll be, oh, okay, this will be my line.
Gert Frobe arrived day one on the set. How do you do? I'm very happy to meet you. That was all right. Then I talked to him and I realized he didn't speak a word of English.
The very first scene I shot on the balcony with Gert. And Gert had to start the scene. And he said, Operation Wanstall. I thought, oh my God. What was that? But his mouth stopped. So I thought, well, okay, I'll say my line.
I always remember Gert Frobe, who was a dear sweet man. You know nothing, Mr. Bond. You know nothing.
Yeah, I think the dubbing was a bit obvious.
Yeah.
In many parts. It was like a spaghetti western style dubbing.
And what about the gadgets in this movie then? I suppose maybe the main one was the Aston Martin DB5, which is probably fair to say the most iconic James Bond car of them all. I mean, what was your favourite gadgets from the?
Yeah, I don't think he had any personal gadgets, did he? He had the tracker.
The thing in his shoe.
Yeah, that's it. I think the Aston Martin's obviously the best gadget ever.
Yeah.
Seemed a shame to ruin it. It's a beautiful car like that. It must have cost a fortune. But, the ejector seat is just... So when Q tells them, the ejector seat, you're joking.
You must be joking.
I never joke about my work, 007.
Ejector seat, you're joking.
I never joke about my work, 007.
You've got the good line as well, where he does put the little tracking device in the gangster guy, Solo's pocket with the note, and obviously Solo then gets killed and crushed in the car, and as you said, he had a pressing engagement.
Yes, there's just so many great one-liners in the film.
There is, yeah. What are some of your favourites?
He meets Pussy Galore on the plane. She said, my name's Pussy Galore. He said, I must be dreaming.
Yeah.
That cracks me up every time.
Honestly, shocking, positively shocking.
Yeah. No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Yeah, that's maybe the most famous one.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
I like the scene at the bank where they have that dinner with Bond and Colonel Smithers. And Bond tries to take the gold ingot and says, you'll draw that with the rest of your equipment. Basically, put it back.
I like in that scene as well where Bond's kind of talking about the rather disappointing brandy and what was wrong with it. It's like, Colonel Smithers is giving the lecture, 007.
I love that whole scene, the way it's set up.
Yeah.
You know, the camera pulls back to set the scene. They're all sitting at the table and just having the conversation with the brandy and then the cigars. That's just so British, I suppose, for that time, just talking about the gold and everything else. It's just brilliant.
He does that a few times in the movie, Guy Hamilton. He pulls back. He does it when they're in the vault in Fort Knox as well, where it's kind of an unbond there, and it pulls back, so you see the whole set. It works really, really well.
So there's hope for me yet.
Money Penny, won't you ever believe me?
What about Pussy Galore? Well, let's talk about Pussy Galore. She is one of the most iconic Bond girls. How do you think her character compares to others in the series, especially given her, I suppose, her independence and complexity?
I think it probably reflected the time, the 60s, when we were a bit more sort of liberal, a bit allowed to do more, I suppose. Getting away from the stereotypes of just working in the secretaries or whatever, and the change in fashion as well, going from the 50s where everything was a bit stayed, post-war, and in the 60s with the explosion of like the music and the films and just the times. In the 60s, everything was cool, a bit more liberal. Attitudes were changing as well. You can see that with the Pussy Galore. She's a bit more independent and tougher, and it's got a more important role in the film than in the previous two.
You can turn off the charm. I'm immune.
I think it just reflects, the 60s, progression of the 60s and attitudes changing.
Yeah, I think she's definitely a better character because she's like much more independent and stuff. So yeah, just really good overall.
Yeah, really good. The strongest one to date and very beautiful as well, obviously. The one scene though, you think you couldn't do that now, in the bar where she succumbs to his charms. It's just like, probably, you wouldn't be able to do that now.
Isn't it customary to grant the condemned man his last request?
You've asked for this.
That's probably get arrested and put in jail for doing that.
But in the book, was she not supposed to be gay?
Absolutely true.
Yeah, in the book, she was gay, wasn't she?
Yeah. But Bond converts her by being Bond. I think that's the message we're meant to get. That's how life works. And I think, obviously it's great. Pussy Galore is very independent and such like. Some of that is undone a little bit when you see the pilots in our flying circus. They're out and they're all the dolly birds with the blonde hair.
Pussy Galore's flying.
Yeah, still, Bond film can be that liberal.
Yeah, it's not that liberal. Yeah, no. They're pilots, but they'll be dolly bird pilots. Of course they are. Of course.
Don't get that easy jet, do you?
This film's a lot more humorous. Do you think that was the right move for the Bond producers to go with compared to the first two, which are a little bit more serious?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think the humour was fine. I don't think it was like a parody. I think the humour fits in really well because it was one-liners according to the scene. I think the best one was the opening sequence that's shocking, positively shocking. It's just absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
And then you got all the other lines all the way through the film. So I think it was good to inject some humour to get away from the seriousness of it all, but it still had the serious bits in between. They didn't turn into a spoof or anything like that. It was like the whole film, everything about it was class, even the humour. And I think it worked really well.
Yeah, I think humour is key, really, and it just reflects the change in times, as Paul was saying there. We're into the mid-60s and sort of tongue firmly in cheek, and maybe because at that time you'd had the Carry On films as well and stuff like that, so it was almost like, while there was some serious bits, and obviously the gold murder, but it was also wasn't taking itself too seriously at the same time, so it had that good balance.
I'm glad to have you aboard, Mr. Bond.
Well, congratulations on your promotion, Goldfinger. Are you having lunch at the White House too?
And obviously it would go full swing when Roger Moore took over, which probably had to at the time. But no, I think they get the humour that just, like everything else in the film, this film changes everything, and it probably, if you didn't have that, this film, would the franchise have lasted,
And Ben, one for you. You're viewing this as a 14-year-old. What are the things that you were watching this movie where you thought, oh, this just feels really outdated and old?
Probably the scene where the woman just gets assaulted by James Bond, really, and that's the main one that sticks out to me. But I don't think anything else really comes to mind.
That's probably a good shout, other than James Bond's kind of onesie type thing at the swimming pool at the beginning. It's a shocker, yeah.
Like trimming the movie fat, why not check out our other podcast, Trimming the Musical Fat?
Okay, so what would you all rate this movie out of 5, and would you keep it in the franchise? So I'll kick us off. And I have to say, I've seen this film so many times, and this is, on rewatching it the weekend, this is the most I have ever enjoyed this movie. But you know how sometimes it just works sometimes. I just so enjoyed it. That much so it's probably gone up in my rankings. So I'm going to go 4.5. And yes, it very much deserves to be in the franchise. Ben, what about you?
I would say 3, and it should stay in the franchise.
Okay. Brother Paul?
5. First 5 in the Bond franchise for me, and obviously staying in. So 5 for me.
I'll have to say 5, and yeah, stay in the franchise.
No, I should be giving it 5, shouldn't I?
Yeah, you.
Well, it's up to you. But yeah, it should be 5.
It should be. Should be. Excellent. So, that concludes our look at the first 3 Bond movies. We will reconvene at some point next year and take a look at Sean Connery's, original full Eon production Bond movies. So we'll take a look at Thunderball, You Only Live Twice, and Diamonds Are Forever. So yeah, we'll come back and do that in the new year. And another fact, actually, before we go, guys, this was the first time Sean Connery wore a toupee as James Bond.
Really?
He did not in the first 2 movies.
So he did.
And actually, if you watch it, you suddenly his hair does look a bit more substantial in this. And on that bombshell, so Paul and Ben, thank you for joining me, and thanks to you all for listening. So please come back again for the next Trimming the Movie Fat episode. And I think the next one's going to be a look at Ridley Scott's Blade Runner. So yeah, do come back for that. And until then, keep trimming.
Trimming the Movie Fat is a Stephen and Paul Nicholson production. We'd love to hear from you. Contact us by voicemail via the Spotify link in the episode description. You can email us at trimmingthemusicfat@gmail.com. Keep up to date with the show and access exclusive content by joining our Facebook group, subscribing to our YouTube channel, and following us on TikTok. You can also check out our website at trimmingthemusicalfat.com. Thanks for listening.